Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Kardec Radio 24/7, always nourishing our souls. Hello, dear sunshine. Good
Hello,
morning to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes, exactly. Sunshine and myself are back here on Kardec Radio thanks to the efforts of the spirit doctor Luiz and Chico Xavier in bringing this masterpiece between heaven and earth to us. In this beautiful masterpiece, they explain how we transition from the earthly realm to the spiritual realm. They explain how we influence one another. They explain how our vibratory fields are composed of our feelings and thoughts, and how that impacts those in our circle of action. And they also explain that none of us changes overnight, that we are free to direct our will towards God or towards our own ego. And today we see the case of a beautiful family that decided to direct their will both individually and collectively towards God and God's wisdom. And it's a beautiful example. And this chapter, dear friends, is chapter 6, entitled In a Christian Home. So our beautiful sunshine is going to do the honors here and provide us with a brief summary of chapter 6 as we embark upon a new journey with highlights from this beautiful chapter filled with wisdom. Right, sunshine?
Yes, Carol, thank you so much for this beautiful introduction. Yes,
Thank you.
so hopefully our hearts and minds are open to take in these beautiful messages that André Luiz has prepared for us this morning. So we're finding ourselves together with Hilario and André Luiz and Minister Clarencio following Zulmira's case. We are reminded that Zulmira and Odila have an obsessive connection going. Odila was the mother of a little child, Julio.
Yes, Julia.
And who died in the waves of the ocean under the lack of watch care of Zulmira. And so as the group, and we are following them along, are finding themselves observing this case. And so Minister Clarencio suggests that the group actually follows and visits little Julio in his new home, in his spirit home. And André Luiz is very excited. And Clarencio explains why this would be an important move. Because remember, they are really wanting to help this obsessive connection between Zulmira and Odila. However, as you know, the good spirits always work in a wider circle. They're reaching first out now to Julio. And he says, and this is quote unquote, for us to grasp the situation in its entirety, we need to contact other characters involved in the drama. I think a visit to little Julio and his present spirit home might be helpful. And further reason why this is an important move, Clarencio make sure that everyone knows that this visit is not just for investigative purposes and definitely not for curiosity, but it is in order to really understand, to be of help, to be of service to all. And Julio is the next step. But before they actually go to visit Julio, again, there's a little detour they're making. And that is that they are following Eulalia, who is one of the spirits on high, who is part of this mission, to accompany two of their incarnate spirits to visit their children. So these are two incarnate mothers who also lost their children. And so Andre and Hilario are following Eulalia along, and they're finding themselves in the home of Antonina. That's their first stop. So they're going down to the earth plane and to the physical realm and finding themselves in Antonina's home. Now, Antonina is a mother of 4, and 3 of them are still incarnated. So she too is a mother who lost a child. Her husband was unable to overcome his temptations and left her 4 years ago because he indulged in criminal adventures. So he is also discarnate. And Andre describes that Antonina, however, did not lose any hope. She does not feel discouraged. She works in a textile factory during the day and is educating her kids with a true love for the gospel. And then a few months ago, we're learning she lost her little 8-year-old, and his name was Margaret, and he died of pneumonia. And so this evening, which is where we're all joining together to experience this God at Home session in Antonina's home with her 3 incarnate children. The 2 boys are 11 and 12 years old. And she has a little girl, and her name is Lisbella, and she's beautiful with blue eyes and blonde hair. And so one of the boys is picking up the gospel, is picking up the New Testament, and he's being asked to open the session with a prayer and then randomly pick a section from the New Testament. And so the evening prayer is done by one of the children, and it is the Lord's Prayer. So they're all praying the Lord's Prayer together. And then the New Testament is opened by Henrik, and it falls onto Matthew, verse 18, 21, and 22. And maybe we remember, and now this is what this section is all about. We're going to read so we can follow along and learn.
Thank you, Sunshine.
Yes, you're welcome. Then Peter approached him and said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? 7? Jesus answered, no, not just 7, but 70 times 7. So we all heard this section, right? So, of course, her son asks a very pivotal question. He says, Mama, why did Jesus recommend so much forgiveness? Wondering too, right?
Right. Excellent question.
Why is he so interested in us practicing forgiveness? And his beautiful mom answers, and we're not going to read the whole answer, we're just picking out highlights, and then we're going to pause and discuss it a little bit further. She says, we are asked to forgive all our neighbors' wrongs against us. And it is the way that the Divine Master showed us to live in peace with one another. So she's summarizing this beautiful commandment, we want to say, that it is our path. It is the recommendation by Jesus to live in peace with one another. So to forgive is for us to reach peace within our own selves, because it's also directed towards our own self-forgiveness, right?
Yes.
Then it radiates also out to others, and that gives us peace of mind. And with one another, we can live in better harmony with one another. As it is a way to relinquish impatience and rebelliousness. And If someone, she says, cannot forgive, they will be feeling lonely. And
Mm-hmm.
imagine that if we can't forgive, we're creating so-called enemies, right? We want to stay away from people because we're holding resentment in our hearts. And of course, resentments closes our hearts. So we have
Mm-hmm.
no problem connecting. Then she says, it will also help us to complain less and criticize less.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness will help us not to complain or criticize so much. And then she gives a beautiful analogy. She says to her children, would you like to drink from a pitcher with murky water? And the children go, ew, no, of course not. We don't do that. So then she says, well, it's the same is true for our spiritual nourishment. We don't, on the physical realm, want to drink murky water, but we also don't want to murky up our soul. We want to have clarity in our soul too. And she says, the soul that can't forgive is filled with evil, and that creates murky, icky water, so to speak. And so by forgiving, it will help us to overcome life's problems. And that is why, she says, Jesus says, we should always forgive, so that the love in our spirit may be like the sun shining on a clean house. So the more we forgive, the more we can open our hearts. And the more we open our hearts and, of course, our minds, the more God's love and light will radiate out. It is a form of mercy. And Jesus in his Beatitudes, we find that in the Gospel chapter 10, he says, blessed are the merciful. Now, for us to be able to forgive, we have to practice that beatitude. We have to be merciful, which goes hand in hand with meekness, as a matter of fact, which is another beatitude by Jesus.
Yes.
And in the gospel, what we learn is, again, it's calmness, gentleness, and charity that we practice and reach within our own selves and with our brothers and sisters when we practice mercy, which leads us to forgiveness. We have to get rid of our resentments and condemnation of others and of our own selves in order to draw closer to God. We can't love unless we cleanse this murky water out of us through forgiveness, which is the main tool of that. When we hold resentment, then we are bound to that other person by a cosmic link. And like a mental chain is being formed. And I once listened to a lecture, it was beautiful. He explained that by not forgiving, we incarcerate the other person. And then, of course, when there is a prisoner, when somebody's in prison, it takes a warden to keep that person in. And
Yeah.
guess who the warden is us if we don't forgive. Now we find both of us. We find ourselves in prison, and we don't even realize it. We think we're doing a righteous act, right? So it is really letting go. There is another book that you may know too, Carol. It's by Emmett Fox. It's called Sermon on the Mount.
Wow.
Right?
I will put it on my reading list.
Yeah, I picked it up
Thank
on
you.
one of the Spiritist sites, and it's not a Spiritist book per se, but it's very much aligned.
Yes, the truth is universal, right? Sunshine, yeah.
Exactly. He says, let go of the erroneous belief to forgive a person. It means that you have to compel yourself to like him. So when we forgive, often we think then we need to be friends. And he reminds us in that. And it really makes sense. And it's actually mirrored in the gospel as well. That we don't have to like those people that we forgive. But what we are invited to practice instead is an impersonal goodwill towards them. And that, again, helps us to live more in harmony with our brothers and sisters. Right? We don't have to cohabitate with them, but impersonal goodwill, I really enjoyed that. It helped. It's quite helpful to have that in mind. So the other one is the forgiveness of sins, right? Is a central issue in our lives because most of us have a really hard time to forgive.
Mhm.
And what does this lack of forgiveness, this sin represent? It represents a disconnection from God. Right here, we are rooted in our own selfishness and pride, which is always the root cause of everything.
Mhm.
And also
Yes.
forgiveness, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, why don't you take it over, Carol? There's a little bit more.
Beautiful, Sunshine.
Yeah.
Thank you for this beautiful explanation. I'm going to write here: impersonal goodwill
Yeah.
leads to forgiveness, right? Impersonal goodwill.
The forgiveness that leads to impersonal goodwill.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So let me correct the order here.
yeah. Can't really
Thank you.
practice it.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, and as we write it, we would like to expand what you said even further
Mhm.
by pointing to another angle, which is the fact that sometimes we have difficulty forgiving because we feel like victims.
Mhm.
For instance, we think, how could that person do this to us? And sometimes we feel righteously angry and indignated. But through the science of Spiritism and the law of action and reaction, we learn that there are no victims in the universe. For instance, in the book Thought and Life, which Sunshine has studied so deeply, we learn from the Spirit Emmanuel that we attract family members, companions, friends with whom we have a vibratory link and who mirror back to us the mental reflexes that we have harnessed throughout many lifetimes. So, for instance, if we have a mother or a father or an aunt or an uncle that truly pushes our buttons, and we wonder how could they behave in such a way with us. We often hear, we have done nothing to deserve this. This is a classic, right? We have done nothing to deserve this. We cannot tell you how many times we have heard this. We have done nothing to deserve it. But the Spiritist understanding approach to life turns that around. Yes, we have done something. It is because we are co-responsible for that person's lifestyle that we are receiving that consequence, that reaction from them. So, for instance, just an example. If we are surrounded by family members with whom we do not have affinity, for instance, let's suppose we reincarnate in a family where alcoholism is prevalent, and we ourselves don't like drinking. So we feel like a fish out of the water, we feel misunderstood, we feel like we don't belong, we feel like we want to tear ourselves out of our own skin. But the fact of the matter is, God is wisdom and God is love. So if God allows for us to reincarnate in that uh, spiky type of context, it is because we are there to inspire, to help our spirit um, network to heal. So instead of criticizing them, oh, you do this and you do that, or who am I to be here? I shouldn't be here. God made a mistake in the GPS calculation when He decided what family I should be part of. God, you better recalculate your GPS. So before we talk to God in this manner, we are being invited by the spirit of science to understand that if God has placed us there, it is one, because God trusts our ability to help that network of spirits to heal. Two, because God believes we are strong enough to understand them and to have that impersonal goodwill towards them. Three, because God allows for successive reapproximations of ourselves with spirits with whom we don't have affinity. Because what is God's ultimate goal, according to Master Jesus? That we win friends. So if we reincarnate amongst a network where we do not find friends in a larger sense of the word, it is because God trusts us to keep planting that seed of understanding, of friendship, of impersonal goodwill. Because if we plant that seed in the future, no matter how far off that future may be, the seed will germinate. So we are reminded in this scenario of antagonisms and forgiveness of the case of Samuel Philippe that Allan Kardec reported in the book Heaven and Hell, also studied by our dear Sunshine here on Kardec Radio. So if you would like to hear a beautiful explanation of the case by Sunshine, the program is available on Facebook and on YouTube for you to enjoy. And on SoundCloud, there is an audio recording of the case that is really beautiful. And Samuel Philippe says, I received a lot of ingratitude when asked by Kardec what his life was like. He says, I received a lot of ingratitude in my existence. I was bullied and diminished by my most beloved friends and family members. But now I thank them. I thank those who were ungrateful to me, says Samuel Philippe, because thanks to them, I was able to repay debts from previous reincarnations. And now those awful situations of which I was part are nothing but a memory. And thanks to those spirits who challenged me, my conscience is completely at peace. Then Samuel Philippe says, oh, if everyone on earth only knew the joy that we experience in the spiritual realm after we have the courage to face our trials, after we have the courage to forgive, after we have the courage to practice impersonal goodwill towards those in our circle. He says, I encourage you, dear friends, to not give up, to persevere, because the joys you shall experience in the future life are so immense that they make up for all the suffering that you live on the earth. So we learn from the case of Samuel Philippe that impersonal goodwill pays off because not only our conscience becomes clear, but also we free ourselves from past debts. And number three, in our view, the best part is we experience an immense joy. It's the joy of living that Master Jesus tells us that the good news will bring. So it's worth it following the good news through forgiveness, right, Sunshine?
Yes, it's an act of charity to forgive.
Yes.
And it's even woven into the definition that we find in the Spirit's book. The definition of charity is goodwill towards all, indulgence towards others' imperfections, and forgiveness towards others' trespasses, and of course our own. It really has to start with our own forgiveness, right? And then the more we can forgive, then we can also receive forgiveness, because we have to keep in mind that we definitely have one, if not 2 feet in the realm of needing forgiveness.
Right. And
Right?
a thought just occurred to us, Sunshine,
Yeah.
because we study languages. If we break the word forgiveness apart, it's forgive. It's meant to be given to others. Forgive. We should give it out, not keep it to ourselves, right? It's
Yeah.
forgiving, giving to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful? How
Yeah.
even the language reflects Master Jesus' proposal
Yeah.
for giving out to others.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
But it's also forgiving to us, because if we can't
Right.
forgive our own acts that we know weren't right, then we're holding remorse, then we're holding guilt. And as Emmanuel teaches us, it's like the minute we're harboring those lower emotions, they open us up to darkness in our mind. They drip poison into us. And
You're
then
right. The forgiving is universal. You're right.
Directions.
Thank you, Sunshine. Beautiful reminder. Yeah.
There's no wrong direction with forgiveness. As Jesus said, 70 times 7.
Right, we got it.
Right. So the best thing is to forgive and to forget, and focus rather on what we can do in the realm of goodness. How can we be of service than self-indulging in lack of forgiveness, right? And true forgiveness, there's also the so-called surface forgiveness, right? When we're just
right.
Oh, I forgive you, and then it's not really, it's only skin deep. So it's really important for us to also tune into the true forgiveness. And how do we know we have truly forgiven? Or how can we see that others have truly forgiven us? Well, the litmus test is really in their actions, because actions speak louder than words. So if there's still actions and words that show that it hasn't really happened, both in us, our own selves, we need to observe ourselves too, then we know that we haven't really forgiven yet. It's in Thought and Life, Emmanuel in chapter 13 calls it the inductive power of our own example.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's what we're striving for, right? Modeling forgiveness above all. All right, so shall we continue?
Yes, we shall. Thank you, Sunshine.
So then, okay, where are we? Yeah, and then one of the boys said, well, Mom, do you really think we should forgive every time? Another good question. And what if the offenses are the worst ever? So, of course, he has a certain example in mind. And he says, I was thinking about Dad, said the boy. He left us when we needed him most. Is it right to forget how much he hurt us? What an amazing question, right? Which will help us further with our inquiry into and practice of forgiveness. And the mother said, oh, my son, let go of that. Why harbor bad feelings against the man who gave you life? So beautiful. How can we condemn him if we don't know everything that happened to him? With heaven's permission, my son, your father gave you the body in which you are learning to serve God. So many lessons in that, right? So this also helps us to put our focus on forgiveness, right? Where is the gratitude? Isn't it more important to switch to gratitude and to find what we can be grateful for, rather than projecting disapproval and anger and rancor and lack of forgiveness? She says, there are acts of service that we can repay only with love. And of course, what she's referring to is, in this case, the act of service is their dad giving them life. And then she says, our debt to our parents is one of them. Our debt to our parents is one of them. And then she refers to Moses who received the divine revelations. And one of the most important laws, she says, is honor your father and your mother. That particular law, she says, does not say that we are to analyze what kind of parents we have. Wow. But that we are to honor them with our loving respect, no matter what. Wow, that's a steep lesson that we're.
What a powerful lesson, right?
Right. And just before we pause, she adds one more thing. She said, the son says, but if Dad had still been here, maybe Marcus, the little guy who died of pneumonia, would not have died. We would have had enough money to get him treated. Oh, good question, right? And Antonina, the mom, is choking on her tears, but she's wiping them secretly away. She says, it would be wrong, my son, to lose our trust in the Heavenly Father. Marcus went to meet Jesus because Jesus called him. So let us pause for a moment. This is such a deep invitation for us, because many of us may have had parents which in our eyes did not fulfill their parental roles as well as maybe they could have. But here we're clearly learning that we are not supposed to analyze their behavior, but honor them no matter what. It is in chapter 14 in the Gospel according to Spiritism. Allan Kardec spoke to that, and Spirits on High spoke to that as well. And what Allan Kardec says in that chapter is that the commandment is a consequence, again, of the law of charity. And we're practicing charity towards our parents. It's the law of love and charity. And it really is for our neighbor in general. Love God above all else and your neighbor as yourself. How can we love God if we don't practice loving our neighbors? And that is, of course, includes our parents, no matter what kind of parents they were. And we're asked to show that to love the parents means fulfilling this obligation of respect, assistance, consideration, and acquiescence. This is a lot, because maybe we can feel our way into that. It's really a matter of feeling, because we're all parents, and it's really it's something to feel, because we all know it mentally. But are we really practicing it, right? Where are we at in truly loving our parents, in giving them the respect, the assistance, the consideration, and acquiescence that is required to fulfill this commandment? Are we surrounding them with the care they gave us in childhood? And if it's not really good care, can we give more? Because we are supposed to love more, not less, right?
Right.
Stretch even further. And that is challenging, it's no question, but this is our invitation. If we fail to fulfill, here's the consequence, law of cause and effect, and you mentioned it, Carol. If we fail to fulfill this commandment, Allan Kardec says, the law of cause and effect will see to us to experience the same ingratitude that we will be or would practice by not taking care of them, and the same abandonment that we would have given to our parents by not fulfilling this commandment. So it's the law of cause and effect. What we give, we receive. So this is really, and it is painful to feel ingratitude. It's very painful. I'm sure we've all been there, right? So then he says one other thing. So like this, like one of the children of Antonina says, some parents don't fulfill their duties for their children. And we need to leave it up to God to let the law go into effect. This is between them and God. We're not born to be judges. We're here to learn love. We're here to practice charity, which is love, is a form of love, right? So we're invited to let go of our selfishness and pride, which would lead us to holding again resentment and not forgive our parents. These two lessons really go hand in hand so beautifully. They feed off of each other. They're linked. They're one.
Mhm.
They're really working together.
Mhm.
So we're invited to let go of our selfishness and pride and forgive and forget our parents' offenses. And in order for us to reach God, there's only one password Alan Kardec gives us. There's only one password, he says, and that is no, it's actually San Antonio. This is
Uh-huh.
Augustine who says that. Saint
Yeah.
Augustine, chapter
Yeah.
14, item 9. He says there's only one password for us to reach God, and that is charity. And it's both the physical, the material, as well as the moral charity. We're giving to our parents sometimes monetarily or providing meals, whatever it may take, giving
Mhm.
shelter. But it is the moral charity that we often have the hardest time with. And that is indulgence. It's goodwill. It's forgiveness. Right, Carol?
Right, Sunshine. Thank you for this beautiful lesson, which we all take to heart. And in the same chapter that you just mentioned, chapter 14, item 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, St. Augustine also shows to us the task of parents as the one and only to guide their children to God. He says that the number one task of parents is to guide their children to God. And in this chapter of Between Heaven and Earth that we are studying, we see Antonina doing exactly that. She is fulfilling her mission by having her little children take part of the God at home. And some of us may be wondering, oh, but aren't they too young? They aren't even going to remember this. If we read the gospel to them, they aren't even going to understand the words. Sometimes we have a laundry list of created impediments that we keep in mind to shelter our children from the adult world where we study the gospel and do the God at home. But St. Augustine is recommending to all of us that it's never too early to start planting the seeds of God's love in that eternal spirit. As a matter of fact, St. Augustine gives us a beautiful scenario in that same chapter. He says that when we feel that we are not yet compatible spiritually as a parent with the incarnating soul, that we stand by their cradle. These are St. Augustine's words. That we stand by their cradle even before they are able to articulate words. And we talk to them as spirits by saying, one of us really hurt each other in the past. And because I am your parent, I am willing to let go of the resentment. And I ask God for strength to learn to love you. These are is a paraphrase. We ask for everyone's forgiveness for our poor paraphrasing skills, but this is our paraphrase of St. Augustine's recommendation in this chapter. So this chapter that Sunshine brought to us is truly precious because not only we have recommendations for children to honor their parents, but we have the responsibility of parents before their children as well. And if we have difficulties with forgiving our parents or embracing our parents, going to the other side of the same coin right now, then we are not alone. Because the majority of families on the earth, says Emmanuel in the book Life and Sex, Vida e Sexo, are experiencing expiation. The majority. This is why in the book Thought and Life, he calls incarnations redemptive struggle. Why does he use the word struggle? One day we will count the number of times that Emmanuel uses the word struggle in the book Thought and Life. Right, Sunshine? It's many times. Why does he call our terrestrial experience a struggle? Because it's not easy. Because we are being approximated with spirits with whom we have a loving debt. So it's a good exercise for us to understand that. So we don't feel guilty if we have antagonistic feelings. Instead, we empower ourselves, as Antonina did in this beautiful chapter, saying, yes, dear heart, dear spirit, we understand you. This is not easy, but God is investing on us. God believes in us. And if we cannot yet tell our parents, we forgive you and we understand you through articulated words like this, we can visualize reconciliation because thought is life. If we visualize reconciliation, dear friends, then we are co-creating it already. And if we are not able to directly talk to our parents because we may be strained from our parents, for instance, we can talk to their guardian angels. And we can ask Master Jesus to stand in the middle and be the referee, be the diplomatic master, bringing us together slowly but surely, so we don't depend. The point that the mentors of Kardec Radio would like us to make is that we don't depend on the other to forgive. We do not depend on our parents to honor them. Our honoring of our parents is independent of them. It is our responsibility, our duty, not theirs. So, independently of what they did or didn't do, we are the ones who have this duty. And this duty begins internally at first, because as Sunshine mentioned so wisely, it is the moral charity that is the hardest. How do we prepare ourselves to, or rather, how do we strengthen ourselves to be able to practice moral charity? First, by tending to our internal landscapes, our vibratory tendencies. And how do we do that? By taming and reframing our thoughts and feelings. How? Going inside and talking to our guardian angel, visualizing reconciliation, feeling it, and even asking the mentor spirits to take us during sleep time to therapy in the spiritual realm, asking for reapproximation. That way, those heavy feelings that are poisonous, as Emmanuel describes in the book Thought and Life, and as Sunshine reminded us of, will be transformed. These are the mountains which Master Jesus tells us faith shall remove. So we are being invited to remove our inner mountains through the power of faith. And it's a lot of inner transformation, right, Sunshine?
It is. It's 24/7.
Yes,
You
exactly.
guys
And
love
let us
it.
say hello, right, to Christina. Welcome, Christina from London. Hello to everyone in London. Welcome, Mark Carlos from Sunshiny, California with Sunshine.
In Nevada.
Welcome,
No,
Sunshine.
he lives
Hi.
in Nevada now. He
Oh,
lives
he's in Nevada now.
in
Okay.
Vegas.
Got it. And hello, Rafael. Thank you for joining us. Beautiful hug for you and your loving family. Right, Sunshine?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and while you were speaking, of the different scenarios of forgiving your parents and honoring them, there's also situations where our parents already passed on. They are
Right,
already kind of
exactly.
with it.
Hmm.
And so the importance that you mentioned, it's really important that we don't indulge in guilt.
Right.
That we feel like, oh gosh, no, I'm learning it all, and I didn't know, and I didn't do this, and so. But there is ways around it. There is self-forgiveness, right? We
Right.
didn't know better, or we didn't have the capacity. We always do our best, and our best keeps changing as we go
Hmm.
through life.
Thank goodness, right,
Yeah,
Sunshine? Yeah.
good. Yeah. And we can't get down on ourselves in the sense that we are harboring so much remorse that we're getting sick, right? Because it's not
Exactly.
emotion. We are invited to transcend them. So what can we do? We can start communicating with our parents in spirit, as you
Hmm.
said, both during the day through prayer and visualizations, but also during the night to ask to during our intelligent sleep to visit them, to communicate with them, to express, maybe our remorse or that we wish we had been kinder to our parents. And then also what we can do is, if we're inclined to reach out to the cosmic parents, right? To the cosmic
Right.
family. And maybe we can help a neighbor. Maybe we can even professionally take care of older people and kind of do what we missed with our own parents.
So
And
beautiful,
is it?
Sunshine.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's also hard because many of us have left our parents behind in our country of origin, and
Mhm.
it's not always so easy to leave our lives in the new country where we're living to take care of our parents or to be present on a continuous basis. So there are challenges, and so yeah, so there's ways to deal with it, right, Carol?
Beautiful. The good is always the good, and
Yeah.
it always spreads beautifully. And Master Jesus promised us that when we do the good, when we clothe a brother and sister who is naked, when we give water to a brother and sister who is thirsty, food to a brother and sister who is hungry, it is for him that we are, it is to him that we are attending to, meaning he shall provide, even though we are not directly attending to our parents per se. Master Jesus knows exactly where they are, and
Mhm.
Master Jesus will take care of them, will channel the beautiful, loving energy to them. And this also reminds us, Sunshine, if you don't mind that we take a little minute,
Fine.
you inspire us so much that now we are bursting with inspiration
Oh my
from you. Thank you. But this, what Sunshine beautifully posed to us, also reminds us of the book Violets in the Window by the spirit Patrícia through the mediumship of Vera Lúcia Marinzec de Carvalho. She has such a long name. I try to remember all her surnames. We apologize if we didn't.
Mhm.
But the name of the book is Violets on the Window. And as Patricia, discarnates, her mother is heartbroken, like Antonina, with the son that passed away, and she still wants to express her love for her daughter. And she knew her daughter loved violets when reincarnated. So her mother decided that she would buy little vases of violet and leave them by the window, tenderly care for them as if Patricia was still incarnated, and she would pray so that the mentor spirits would take the violets to her. So symbolically, the violets would show Patricia the love that the mother had for her. And this actually happened, friends. The spirit mentors took the vases in its spirit form to Patricia, and they said, "This is from your mother." So we see how love never perishes, right, Sunshine? It goes beyond all dimensions of the material life.
Exactly. And that is exactly what segues us into the last part of the chapter.
Yes.
Exactly about that. Because
Mhm.
the little Lisbella, the little daughter, is now asking Antonina, her mom, and said, "Mommy, can Marcus see us?" And Marcus
Right.
is the discarnated little brother. And the mom says, "Of course he can. He helps us in spirit by asking Jesus to give us his strength and blessings.
Oh, yes.
In return, we should help him with our prayers and best memories." And that's then how they're closing. They got at home, they're drinking the blessed water that Antonina had prepared, had set out before they started the meeting. Henrik is doing the closing prayer. He's choosing again the Lord's Prayer. And they're drinking the blessed water that was blessed by Andre Luiz and what's the other spirit's name? I'm terrible with names. I'm sorry. Hilario. Yes, it was the blessed water. And it just shows us so beautifully that even if our parents are deceased now, our children, anyone, any loved ones, we can access them and communicate with them and visit them anytime. We know that they are there to help us. And we, in return, can be of service to them through prayer, through beautiful memories, always keep holding them close in our hearts. And of course, forgiveness helps tremendously, right? Because otherwise, as Jesus said, before you come and pray, forgive 70 times 7. How can we have an open heart and connect with God, with Jesus, with our loved ones, if we're holding on to old stuff that needs releasing? So we're always surrounded by spirits. We're never alone. We're always invited to support discarnated spirits, even our obsessors.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
we
would
can
say
pray for
especially them, because
yes.
they
And
are friends who have been traumatized by us at some
yes,
point.
yes.
So it is our responsibility to help them heal as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They are family to us
Yeah.
as well, right?
Definitely temporarily their family.
Yes, exactly. So let us all invite them to our Thanksgiving celebration. At
Exactly.
least here in the US, where we are about to celebrate Thanksgiving, we have social distancing taking place, but the discarnate spirits don't
No,
need social distancing, so they can join us in a feast of thankful prayers,
yeah,
right, Sunshine?
exactly, Carol. Beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah.
and thank you, Rudy, for joining us. We are grateful to your presence as always on Kardec Radio. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you.
You are a beautiful soul, and yes, Andre Lewis's message is truly beautiful
Yeah.
and shall nourish us for eternity. It's beautiful to see a Christian mother in
Mhm.
action, a mother that puts Jesus at the center stage of her relationships. It's so beautiful.
And she models forgiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't even use many words, but she's just,
No.
her whole energy is filled with forgiveness. She doesn't hold anything against her ex-husband. I mean,
Right. It's so beautiful that she is able to do that. And because she vibrates at such a high level, due to her light-hearted spirit, Andre Luiz and Mentor Clarencio and Hilario will take her soon in the chapter to come, right, Sunshine? Will take her to see her very son, Marcus, who is discarnated. And because the mentor spirits are always at service, above their own self-centered agendas, they don't have a self-centered agenda. They are not there just to help her. They are also going to see little Julio, but the encounter between the mother Antonina and the son Marcus is truly, truly moving, dear friends. And we can't wait to share, right, Sunshine?
Yes,
How
yes,
love is everlasting.
yes, everlasting and so vast, right? And here,
Yes.
this very team that Andre is part of, they are really wanting to help Odila and what's her name?
Zumira.
I think rely on your knowledge about that. Name.
Together we can do this.
Yeah, teamwork.
Mhm.
So they're really here to help with this obsessive situation. But again, we're seeing in action how before they act and yank them apart, they are opening their hearts and minds, going around to really understanding, which is really the first step to the inner renewal, right? Understanding the whole situation and all the players. And in that understanding, effort of understanding, they're being charitable and being of service. And that is something to observe this mechanism in all, I want to say in all of Andreas Luiz's books. It's something for us to really make our own, to really understand and practice, right? That we're not just myopically dealing with the fire that's in front of us, but to really use this approach of, okay, let's let that fire maybe burn a little bit, but really work on understanding. And in that, we're helping more than just
Yeah, it's beautiful as you're saying how they do not focus solely on the person whom they were tasked to assist. They help the entire network, and their focus is always to spread love and understanding in all directions. And it's beautiful, as you said, Sunshine, how they prioritize the ones that they are not tasked to help. Officially, they're not officially tasked with helping Antonina or their children, but they are so aware of God's goodness that they seek to expand their radius of assistance always further. So it's a beautiful lesson for us on how time and again, as you said, in all Andre Lewis's books, and how we can embrace our universal family, and how, as we embrace the universal family, those who are dear to us will be automatically enlightened as well.
and
Right?
that's
So,
and
yes, so beautiful.
Yes. So we're excited to wait for, or it's hard to wait for next week.
Oh,
But
so hard.
we'll be excited to be back next week, the same place, and celebrating chapter 7, which is entitled An Imbalanced Conscience.
Yes, we can hardly wait. In the meantime, we wish you all lots of blessings, much gratitude to the mentor spirits like Clarencio, like Hilario, like Andre Lewis, who teach us so much and who work anonymously and tirelessly to spread the good in all directions. May we all be inspired by their beautiful Christ-centered living examples. Right, Sunshine?
Yes, and we're wishing everyone a thankful week, a week filled with thankfulness.
Yes.
Culminates here in the United States and celebrating. Even if we're not in the United States, we're invited to practice gratitude. Yes, and we'll see you at the end of the meeting.
Yes, that is always a pathway to love.
Yes.
Right, Sunshine?
Thank
Gratitude
you,
is a pathway to love.
yes.
Thank you.
Much love.
Much love and many blessings. Bye, friends.